Hey Most Amazing Top 10 family, I'm your host Jay Duranda and welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. Space is the final frontier. Don't start filling up the comments with all the Star Trek stuff. I've seen like half an episode. I just know that saying, that's it. But space is an endless void that we know very little about, so it has to be home to something other than a bunch of planets with no known life on them. There has to be more to the universe. If you don't believe that, then that's your choice. But when someone tells me that infinity exists, I assume that there is something else out there. And to sway the non-believers, I am bringing you today's list of top 10 scary things astronauts have seen in space. As always, I would love it if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. Also, stick around for the whole list because I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts, which you guys love so much. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. And without taking any longer, let's get into this list. At number 10, we have Green and Shiny. Gordon Cooper was doing one of the most amazing things a human being has ever done. He was completing a 34-hour orbiting flight around the planet. This was in May of 1963. I can only imagine he saw parts of Earth that most people only dream of. But during this flight, he didn't just get an amazing view and some awesome pictures for Instagram. Also, that is the future of space travel. Influencers are going to go up there and take a bunch of pictures in zero gravity, and then space is going to become a fad for all of the people who want to post it all over their social media. But anyways, during this flight, Gordon Cooper was approached by a green orbiting light that floated up to him in his spacecraft and then flew away. He was so amazed by this encounter that he talked in front of the UN and he said that I believe that extraterrestrial vehicles and crews are visiting our planet from other planets. Hey, this guy has been to space. If anyone knows, it's this guy. At number 9, we have Incorrect. Do you guys know Chris Hadfield? You probably should, baby. He's got a master class. If you do it, they let you go to space. But here's one occasion where Chris was relaying information to the Russian Mir space station so they could dock on his ship. While this was happening, his sensors that tell him how far the station is started giving him the wrong information. This is terrifying to see because if they come in too slow, they won't latch and then they'll just be both floating out there in the void of space. And if they come in too fast, then they crash and everyone dies. One sensor was telling Chris that they were 32 feet away and another one was saying that they were 20 feet away. He thought that at least one of them had to be right, so he used his thumb to judge the distance and a stopwatch to judge the speed, and then realized that they needed a touch more speed and got the connection perfectly. Now this is all very nerdy stuff, but that is one of the most bad boss thug life things I have ever heard of in my life. The station weighs 250,000 pounds and the connection they have to hit is the size of a DVD player and he eyeballed it. Well, now I gotta take his masterclass. At number 8, we have Leroy's Lights. Leroy Chiao is a former commander of the International Space Station, which is one of the coolest titles I have ever heard in my life. While he was working up there, he witnessed something very strange. He saw a line of lights floating through the sky like it was some sort of formation. He said it looked like a grouping of UFOs flying in formation. He also said that it would be ridiculous to think that we are alone in the universe. And if he says that, it's gotta mean something, right? At number 7, something fell off. In 1991, Musa Manarov was on the Russian space station. He was watching a nearby shuttle do a very standard docking, and he decided it would be a good thing to get on camera. I mean, why not? How often are you up in space? Might as well take a few pictures to savor the moment. Now, what he did not expect to see was a little item fall off the spacecraft. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking it was just a piece of the ship detaching or something, but the shuttle was already latched. There wasn't any movement that should have jostled something loose from the spacecraft, and then this mystery item fell directly from the ship down towards Earth. It didn't float in space, and it's all on camera, so you can check it out for yourself. At number 6, we have Vlad and the Little Finger. In 1981, Vladimir Kolvanyuk was on board the Russian space station and he took a peek out of one of the windows. He saw something strange. He said it wasn't really a UFO, but just a little small object. Even if it's just a little finger-sized device because it's supposed to be space. There's nothing out there. Well, he watched this thing for a moment and then it exploded. Maybe it was shy, I don't know. But it seemed that it wasn't some piece of debris or rock or something. There was something in it that made it explode. Maybe it was a UFO UFO, just a very tiny one, or maybe it was some sort of surveillance device and exploded upon its own discovery. Whatever it was, it's gone forever now. And number 5, we have, was it just a reflection or something real? James McDewitt was in space in 1964, and he saw something that he couldn't explain. There was something floating out in space. He said it looked like a ship, but it was in the shape of a beer can and it was glowing white. Now, when you hear something like this, you think aliens, and that's what all the press thought too when they heard the story and they ran it. Years later, he reviewed some of the footage and he said what he saw was just a reflection. Now, what do you think? Could this have actually been something out in space and the government told him to keep his mouth shut, or was it just a reflection? And number 4, we have toxic ammonia. Okay, this list is teaching me that astronauts are some of the coolest people around. Bob Kerman was on the International Space Station installing a bunch of upgrades. You gotta keep that station looking good. Now, while he was out in space doing this, a valve blew and sprayed ammonia all over his spacesuit. And this is very bad because if he brought it back into the station, everyone would suffocate and die from the ammonia fumes. So he used his big brain. He floated out in front of direct sunlight because ammonia has a very low boiling point. This would burn the ammonia off of his suit. Another astronaut came out and then brushed his suit off, and everyone were mass breathing oxygen upon his re-entry just to be safe. Now look at the big brain on Brad. I mean, Bob. I meant to say Bob. Bob. And number 3, we have, what is that noise? Seen or heard? They're two sides of the same coin. One being a little scarier than the other, but just reading this story really freaked me out, so I had to throw it on this list. This was back in 2003. China would launch Yang Li Wei into space. Now, it wasn't just the trip of him being blasted in a rocket into the vacuum of space that was scary, although the sounds of a roaring rocket ripping through the sky must be pretty terrifying. It was what happened after Yang got aboard the space station. That night he was there and he heard something very strange. There was a knocking coming from outside the space station. Now, this is messed up for a lot of reasons. First, it's the vacuum of space. There shouldn't be anything floating around outside in space, and if there was, it shouldn't be alive long enough to knock. And the second reason, being even spookier than the first, it's the vacuum of space. It's the same reason as the first. Sound needs something to pass through so you can hear it, like air or water. As the old saying goes, in space, no one can hear you scream. So how could this have happened? Could this have just been something in the station that was making a weird noise? Maybe something was floating around loose and bumped against a wall? I don't know, but he heard it more than once. And number 2, we have the space eel. This sounds like the title of a cheesy horror movie that was made in the 1950s. We're gonna take two things we don't understand and put them together, and then you got a movie. Well, it's actually what Story Musgrave saw. He was an astronaut working with NASA, and one day while floating around through the endless void, he saw something very strange. It was a long white space eel. He said it had its own propulsion system to move through space. That sort of discredits anyone who thinks it was just some sort of inanimate object. And that kind of thing does happen. Things fall off of spaceships and space stations and they will just be debris out in the open, just loose and going. And if the propulsion system wasn't enough to convince you, he said he saw this thing not once, but twice. And for the number 1 spot, we have the moon landing visitors. I don't care what you think about the moon landing. If you believe in it, cool. If not, cool. Leave me alone in the comment sections. I don't care. But for the believers, when Neil Armstrong and his crew landed on the moon, there was a lost transmission that Neil sent out when he stepped foot onto the moon, and it went like this. These babies are huge, sir, enormous. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out here, lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the moon watching us. End quote. Apparently, there were 2 massive spaceships that were floating above them as they stepped out onto the moon. Now, this transmission was never released into the public until years later, and Neil didn't talk about it until right before he died. So if you don't believe in the moon landing, I guess this is a cover-up on a cover-up. Alright everyone, that has been our list, and as promised, I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. I pick new pets every day, so if you don't get picked one day, you can message back another day. I usually pick who messaged last, so if you don't get picked, you can just message again and again and again. If it takes me a little while to get back to you, I'm very sorry. I have a lot of these to do. And without taking any longer, let's shout out some pets. First off, we have Luna, who has an amazing bow in her hair. Look at how cute that dog bow is. Man, everyone with a dog in quarantine, I am so jealous of all of you. Next up, we have Renee, who has some of the best shaggy hair of all time. That dog has great style. Then we have Bean, who has a little pot belly. Look at that little chunky belly. I love it. After that, we have the cat, Lit. He is chilling in the sun super hard. I know he is having a dope day. That sunshine probably feels so good on him right now. And to top it off, we have Bo. Look at how majestic this good boy looks. He looks like he's supposed to be in a movie. All right, everyone, that has been everything we have for you today. As always, I would love it if you could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. Until next time, I've been your host, Jay Durana, and I'll see you in space.